The dead are not resting. They're working. You've heard otherwise your whole life, haven't you? That death is the final curtain, the grand fade to black. That once your heart stops, so does your story. But you were misinformed. I didn't vanish when I died. I woke up. Not in the way I used to. There was no bed, no ceiling, no heartbeat pounding in my chest. Just awareness. Pure electric awareness floating in a place where sound didn't echo and light had no source. It wasn't dark. It wasn't bright. It just was. They call it the astral plane, a dimension between worlds, between lives. And the first thing I noticed wasn't the silence. It was the clarity. I didn't have a body, but I felt everything. And I don't mean emotions, I mean truth. Like my soul had removed a blindfold it didn't know it was wearing. That's when I saw him. He didn't glow. He didn't hover. He just stood there, calm, timeless, familiar, as if I'd known him before I was born. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet. The man whose name I'd only heard in whispered documentaries and strange books I was too afraid to finish. "You're not dead," he said. "You've simply arrived." I tried to speak. No words came, only a thought pulsing from within. "Where am I?" He smiled. "You're in the first classroom after life." That confused me. Classroom? Death, he continued, is not a grave. It's a gateway, and you've stepped through it. He gestured around us. At first, I saw nothing. Then the world began to shift, not like a dream, but like someone adjusting the lens of a telescope. Shapes emerged, places I knew, people I remembered, scenes from my life, but they weren't memories. They were living echoes, shimmering like fog, wrapped in purpose. "You're not here to rest," Cayce said gently. "You're here to reflect." This wasn't heaven. It wasn't hell. It was in between, a realm where souls didn't float endlessly in bliss or burn in punishment. They worked, not in the way you'd think. Not labor, but insight, review, growth. And as he spoke, I felt something stir within me, a vibration, low and deep, like my very being was tuning into a frequency it had long forgotten. My mind tried to grasp it logically, but this place didn't run on logic. It ran on resonance. Cayce stepped closer. "Everything you did, every choice you made, it left a mark. Here, we trace those marks, not to judge you, to understand you." I looked at my hands, but there were no hands, just awareness, just presence. And then I remembered the moment I betrayed a friend, the moment I lied to someone I loved, the time I chose fear over truth. They all appeared, not as flashes, but as experiences. I felt what they felt, not as punishment, but as perspective. "You see now," Cayce said softly, "death doesn't erase who you were. It reveals who you are." This was not what I expected, not clouds and harps, not fire and chains, but something more powerful, more intimate, terrifying in its honesty. The afterlife wasn't a fantasy, it was a mirror, and I was just beginning to look. There is no courtroom in the afterlife. No divine judge, no angel with a scroll, no booming voice from the sky. Just silence, and then something far more powerful. A mirror, not made of glass or light, but of memory, emotion, impact. That's what Edgar Cayce called it, the mirror of the soul. And when you stand before it, you don't just see your reflection, you feel it. Not the surface you, the real you, the one you try to forget. "There is no hiding here," Cayce told me, "not from others, not from God, especially not from yourself." And then it began, not as a film, not as a slideshow, but as a full immersion into every moment I had once lived, big or small. I wasn't watching my life. I was inside it again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. I could feel them. The people I'd hurt, the ones I'd helped, the strangers I'd passed without a word. I didn't just relive what I did. I felt how it felt to them. The time I dismissed someone's pain, I now felt their shame, their shrinking inside. The time I smiled at a stranger in line, I felt their tiny breath of relief, their invisible gratitude. The time I betrayed someone who trusted me, I felt their heartbreak. Not as a memory, but as if it were mine. It wasn't punishment. It was education. You see, Cayce said, his voice steady, heaven and hell aren't places. They're states of awareness, and you decide where you go based on how deeply you're willing to see yourself. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. The mirror wouldn't let me. Not out of cruelty, but because the only way forward was through. Some moments were unbearable. Some were beautiful. Some were so mundane, I had forgotten them. But now, I saw how they had rippled far beyond what I knew. A kind word that saved a life. A careless joke that haunted someone for years. A missed opportunity that changed the course of another's day. And mine. I began to see my life as not a timeline, but a web. Interconnected, delicate, vibrating with every choice I'd ever made. And the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. I was never being judged, I was being shown. Because this is what the afterlife really is. A continuation of learning, of seeing, of realignment. You don't come here to be condemned, Cayce said. You come here to understand why you did what you did and what it did to others. I felt hollow. I felt full. I felt broken open. And that's when something in me cracked, not in pain, but in truth. As if the weight I'd carried for lifetimes had finally been brought into the light. Cayce placed a hand, at least the energy of one, on my shoulder. "This is only the beginning," he whispered. "What you see here will shape where you go next." In that moment, I realized something so simple, so obvious, I'd missed it my entire life. No one escapes their own consciousness, not in death, not ever. And somehow, that was comforting, because it meant nothing was wasted, not even our mistakes, especially our mistakes. They weren't stains, they were signposts. I thought Edgar Cayce would be my only guide here, but the astral plane, this realm of reflection and resonance, had other plans. She appeared not with fanfare, but with stillness. Not in robes or radiance, but as a quiet presence, like a candle burning low in the dark. Her name was Miriam. "I was once a priest," she said before I could even ask. 37 years serving a church I believe held all the answers. Her voice didn't carry sorrow. It carried clarity, the kind you can only find when the dust of a life has fully settled. I prayed to a God I never saw, taught a doctrine I never questioned, warned others of hell I didn't understand. And yet, I never felt him. I waited, unsure if she meant to confess or teach. She did both. "In this plane," she continued, "I saw the truth, not a rejection of faith, but a realignment of it. What I found here shattered everything I thought I knew about God." She looked directly into me, not at me, but into me, like she was peering into my memories. "God," she said, "is not a man in the sky, not a ruler, not a scorekeeper. He, if we must say he, is awareness, expansion, a mirror made of light. He is within, not above." I could feel the tension in my soul unwinding. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. Miriam walked me through her awakening. She described her transition into the astral plane as a jolt. She arrived expecting judgment, reward, punishment. Instead, she was met with silence. Then came the mirror. And like me, she saw her life not through the eyes of heaven, but through the hearts of those she touched and harmed. She had preached about hellfire while ignoring the poor. She had told grieving parents their child's death was God's will. She had stayed silent when women cried in confession. I thought I was righteous, she said, but I was just afraid. And that was the root of it. Fear. She feared doubt, feared curiosity, feared anything outside the box of doctrine, because the moment she stepped outside, the whole illusion would collapse. Religion, she said, was never the problem, but fear wrapped in sacred language. That is, it hit me like thunder. How many things had I believed? Not because they were true, but because I was too afraid to question them. Cayce appeared again, standing beside her. Many souls arrive here with chains made not of sin but of silence, he said. Miriam nodded. But once you break them, you don't lose your faith. You find it. I asked her the question I never dared ask in life. So, is there a God? She smiled, not with her lips, but with her entire being. Yes, she said, but not the one you were taught to fear, the one you already are a part of. God wasn't elsewhere. He was here, in the grief we learned from, in the joy we shared, in the acts of kindness no one saw, in the questions we were too scared to ask. You don't find God by escaping life, Miriam said. You find him by being fully alive. That struck something inside me. A memory of the time I wept in secret after hurting someone and prayed for forgiveness. I thought no one heard me, but now I realized I had heard me, and that was enough. Every prayer you've ever whispered, Miriam said, echoed inside the very fabric of your soul. And here, you hear it again. She turned, slowly beginning to fade. But remember, she called back, you don't have to die to awaken. You just have to be willing to see. And then she was gone, leaving behind not doctrine, not rules, but something deeper, a spark, and the burning question: what if the faith you need most is the one that leads you back to yourself? You're not as alone as you think. That was the first thing Cayce said to me after Miriam faded. The astral plane shimmered, almost like it had overheard him and agreed. I could feel it shift, not physically, but energetically, like tuning a radio into a different station. And suddenly, I wasn't just seeing echoes of my life. I was sensing the lives I touched and those who had touched mine, even after they'd passed. They're still with you, Cayce said. The dead don't disappear. They simply change frequencies. It sounded poetic, but then it got real. I saw my grandfather, not in the body I remembered, but as a presence of warmth, humor, and resolve, the man who taught me how to tie a tie, the man who cried when I graduated. He wasn't speaking, he was transmitting a pulse of support, of love, of guidance. You felt this before, Cayce said, in dreams, in sudden emotions, in choices that seemed to come from nowhere. I had. Moments where I felt watched but comforted. Moments where I narrowly avoided danger without knowing why. The times an idea came like a lightning bolt from the void. They weren't accidents, Cayce whispered. They were nudges. This was the twist I never saw coming. The dead aren't gone, they're active. Some linger close, watching over loved ones, helping them heal, whispering courage when they falter. Others work on broader missions, influencing art, science, consciousness itself. They form networks, Cayce said, like councils of invisible mentors. My chest tightened. Was it possible that those I'd lost, those I thought were forever silent, had never stopped speaking? I remembered the day I nearly gave up, the voice that said, "Keep going." It hadn't sounded like mine. It had felt older, wiser, familiar. You heard right, Cayce nodded. I asked him, but why don't we all feel it? Why don't we know? He smiled sadly. Because the world teaches you to be deaf to subtle things. It distracts you. It tells you to chase noise. And in all that noise, you forget how to listen. I stood there in the middle of the in-between, and I realized something profound. We are never disconnected. We are just unaware. And if we slow down, if we quiet the chaos, if we open that inner space just a little wider, we might just hear them again. The dead, our guides, our past, not behind us, but beside us, helping us remember who we are and who we're still becoming. There is no staircase, no gate, no grand finale. When it's time to return, it just happens. The astral plane begins to shift. The light dims, not because it's fading, but because your awareness is narrowing. The soul prepares to slip back into the density of the physical world. And I felt it. A soft pull, like a tide reversing. Cayce stood in front of me one last time. Most don't remember this place, he said. Not fully. The human mind isn't built to carry this level of truth all at once. I didn't want to leave. Not because it was easy here, but because it was real. No lies, no masks, no pretending, just truth pulsing like a heartbeat. But, he continued, you'll carry the essence of it, the vibration, the knowing. Even if your mind forgets, your spirit won't. I nodded, but the questions kept pressing. What do I do with this? How do I live now, knowing what I know? Cayce smiled. Live like every thought echoes, like every action ripples. Live as though your soul is watching, because it is. And above all, live awake. He reached toward me, not to touch, but to transmit. In that moment, I felt a surge, not of light, not of power, but of clarity, images, feelings, truths. A child I would inspire, a mistake I would prevent, a person I would save simply by being present. They flashed through me, not as guarantees, but as possibilities, seeds waiting to be planted. You chose this life, Cayce said. You asked for this body, this time, this challenge. Now go. Remember, not everything, just enough. The scene dissolved, not like a dream ending, but like a wave pulling back into the ocean. And I opened my eyes. Back here, in the world of noise, of clocks ticking, of coffee cups and car horns and deadlines. But something was different. The air felt thicker. My hands looked older. The people around me felt like echoes of something more. And in the still moments, I could feel it. That hum behind the curtain, that soft whisper of souls still walking beside me. I wasn't here by accident. And neither are you. I now understood. This life is a preparation, not for judgment, but for clarity. We're not here to be perfect. We're here to wake up, to love harder, to forgive sooner, to remember who we are before the world told us to forget. And when our time comes again, and it will, there won't be a scoreboard, just a mirror, a review, an invitation to rise higher. The truth is, I never died. I shifted. And now, I've shifted again, back into skin, back into breath. But this time, I see. I see the web connecting every soul, the mission etched behind every pain, the sacredness in every moment we survive and every one we shape. So if you're hearing this, if something in you is stirring, it's because part of you remembers too, not just where you're going, but where you came from and who you've always been. Welcome back.